I'm Alan Ing. I'm with Zorian Kit, and today we review Being the Ricardos on Amazon. This is the story of Lucy and Desi Arnaz, and Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, and it's written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. And yeah, this is a really interesting one. I don't know what your familiarity is with I Love Lucy, but I used to watch it as a kid every single day. I know you're from Canada and an immigrant as well. But what is your connection to I Love Lucy?
I really don't have a connection to I Love Lucy. My connection to it is just basically whatever I saw clip-wise, pop culture footage, a little snippet here or there. I actually do remember when Lucy died, and I remember the front page of the newspaper carrying her obituary, and again, clips from that. So I've never seen a full show.
I've seen every single episode and too many times to some degree. I mean, I loved I Love Lucy. I watched it as a child, and I found this interesting because when the trailers first came out, there was this concern about what, are they doing impressions of Lucy? Is Nicole Kidman doing an impression of Lucy? Is Javier Bardem doing an impression of Desi Arnaz? And I like the fact that they really didn't. The only impressions you really see are, when Nicole is portraying Lucy on television on her show. Yeah, she puts on this impression of her, but it's pretty much Nicole and Javier behind the scenes. And I think I like that. I don't think I could have stood for a, just this drawn out, oh, well, she sounds just like Lucy.
Yes, well, I think that if anyone is going into this film expecting a remake of the show, then that's not what that's not what this film is about in any capacity. And what this film does is it really distinguishes between the on-screen personas of these people versus who they really were behind the scenes. And the real focus is about them behind the scenes and everything that was happening there, which is why whatever preconceived notions you may have about casting, whether you approve or disapprove based on the posters and the trailers, it doesn't really matter, because what matters is that the actors in this case actually do capture I never knew these people, right? We don't really know what they're like off the show. Everyone seems to know them on the show, but they really portray these complex characters. I feel like I've gotten to know their spirits and their souls as portrayed by Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman, and that did not interfere with any physical attributes that I may or may not have attributed to the casting of these characters.
Yeah, and I think my point is, I think it would have been distracting had they done that, but they didn't. And I'm okay with an Australian playing an American and a baritone playing a tenor. Not exactly the real characters, but so we are coming at this from different angles. Because I did know Lucy. I did follow her career after the Lucy show and up to her death, and yeah, I think this is Aaron Sorkin, so he really drills down into these characters, and I like that there were basically two dynamics going on. There was this the story deals with Lucy and Desi as a couple, because stories are coming out that Desi may be cheating on Lucy. There's also a big story coming out that Lucy may be a communist, and so I liked that there was this tension in the drama between Desi and Lucy of, can they really trust each other? And then we get the history of how they became a couple. And then at the same time, it's this, Hollywood politics going on, because Lucy is on the verge of getting canceled basically for being a communist. And then you have the pressures of trying to put on a show, and Lucille Ball putting on a show where she's very, meticulous about her comedy. The entire, a great deal of time is spent of Lucy chewing on and kind of going over this scene, this physical comedy that takes place at the table. And that is, to me, the heart of this movie. It's just character study and these complex relationships.
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to remember this is an Aaron Sorkin film.
Yeah.
Aaron Sorkin, as we have come to know as a filmmaker, by and large, with his television work and his film work, loves to tackle issues that are on the more political end of the spectrum. His TV shows, The Newsroom, Sports Night. What was the one that set in the White House?
West Wing.
West Wings, and then Facebook, Chicago Trial, the Chicago 7. So I think what drew him to this particular storyline was the fact that it takes place from a Monday read through to a Friday taping of a single episode of I Love Lucy, and all the drama that happens in between. The most prominent one being the fact that Lucy was labeled as a communist because that was the box she had ticked off on her card, and that is the heart of the story, I think, for Aaron Sorkin. And that's where the drama kind of flows from there. And then we delve into, through flashbacks, how this couple met, Lucy's aspirations and coming this close to being a major movie star on par with all the other greats of that era, and the disappointment that didn't happen. And then just who's the bigger star, Lucy or Desi / Ricky, and then just the sexism and the male preconceptions of women, and how women couldn't be sexy on TV, or they couldn't portray pregnancy on TV. So there's a lot of social issues thrown in, not to mention the overarching political issue, cancel culture. It felt very modern of the times. Like, those issues, you can definitely transport them to today's times in some of the issues that we're dealing with.
I found interesting the male emasculation, this idea of Lucy being the more popular, more dominant, the one that people drew to, but also Desi. He played a big role in creating Desi Lou Studios, of running the business aspect of it, but also feeling like he's taking a back seat to Lucy in terms of performing and in terms of the notoriety, and that maybe they're not always seen as the team, and which then leads on. It plays out just like it does in real life of when they would. I mean, because you do know at the end of the movie that they're ultimately going to get a divorce, and we find out why. And and I think to me this, I think this is a much more personal story that Aaron Sorkin's ever told. It feels much more like a more of a romance from an Aaron Sorkin than before, and I think I do like the change in that as well.
Yes, it definitely felt like it was a love story, stories of friendship as well. You see the relationship she has with
Fred and Ethel.
Yes, exactly.
Vivian and William Frawley.
Yes, yeah. And, and you think that at first that, well, perhaps the only fully fleshed out characters are going to be Lucy and Desi, and everyone else is just going to be a caricature of some sort. But, even when they have these table reads and we get to know the writers and their stories, and just all the other people, you get you really get a sense that you've dropped in to this particular time period, and you're sitting and watching all of this develop. Now, I do have to point out that when they do show recreate episodes of the show, those are black and white, and I think that's I really like that touch, because the show was black and white, and so when it goes to that, you really get a separation, that there's a real person and then there's the caricature that they play. And so that separation between color and black and white really kind of gives you a separation in your head, where you're actually going like, wow, she really was not who we thought she was on the screen. But what it also does is they're not necessarily flashbacks of episodes. They're almost like flash forwards because when they're blocking things out, we flash towards the end result.
Well,
And
I think I think what that is, and this is the point they're making, is that Lucy has a specific vision in mind of how a scene plays out. And so, they hadn't done the wine scene, the famous wine stomping scene, grape stomping scene. They haven't done the iconic grape stomping scene at that point, but she is in her mind visualizing how it would play out. And I think that's what you're referring to.
And I think to your point, and which is what I was going to say, is that the reason it's more of a flash forward, even though it's a flashback for viewers who remember those episodes, is to highlight just how much of a comedy genius this woman was. I mean, it's clear she's very difficult, but she also is fiercely and madly in love with her husband. But she also has pride, and she's also a comic genius. She paved the way for so many other people who came after her, and that we cannot underscore that importance more, and it's so apparent in this movie.
Well, I think that's the big thing, is Lucy was so good at what she did that she could command full creative control over her television show to some degree. She could make demands on basically CBS and Philip Morris, the sponsor, to say this is what the show's going to be. And I think this is, that's how pivotal she is in this role as an actress, as a creator, and as, quite frankly, the head of a studio, because ultimately Desi Lu would go on to create or to produce Star Trek. And so that, this was a business that she was behind. So let me ask you this: we talked about the story, but we haven't talked about the performances. What did you think of Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem?
I didn't mind it. I think at first it just took me a beat to kind of go, oh, okay, I'm watching the heart and soul of someone. I am not comparing cheekbone size or voices.
Honestly, she looked like the makeup looked like Ben Platt from Dear Evan Hansen. There's a lot of smoothing over to make her look like Lucy.
But here's the thing. The thing that I did mind, and I thought, okay, come on, Aaron Sorkin, you are way better than this, is that in some of these flashback scenes, there's a lot of de-aging happening here, particularly on Javier Bardem. I thought more so on him, I think, than on her. And I thought it just looked, there's that creep factor that happens when you start messing with someone's face and just smoothing things out. It just looked, it looked a little fake, a little creepy. And I thought, with today's technology and everything that's available in VFX, it should
You don't have to do it. Yeah, and quite frankly, Javier Bardem, even with the greatest makeup artist, will never look like Desi Arnaz. Desi Arnaz was, the classically handsome Latin gentleman, and that's not Javier Bardem. No offense. And so you didn't need to go that far. And I think, you're ultimately gonna you're just gonna let it go and just enjoy the performance.
That's what I did. In fact, I let it go very quickly. No, I wasn't the thing is, it's not like I was hanging on tightly to some preconceived notion. I have no ties or things towards the show, right? It's not something I grew up on, so I'm not wedded to a particular look or voice. And I never knew anything about them behind the scenes. So I'm not wedded to a particular look or voice or performance. So whoever it would have been playing, I would have accepted it, barring really horrible acting. But you have two really good actors in this case, and I think they captured what they needed to capture for this role.
Yeah, well, and for anyone my age and older, we do know Lucy, and I like the fact that Nicole and Javier were able to capture the spirit of the character. They're, like I said, I'm so glad they didn't do impressions, but they really captured the the character of Lucy on television is so much different than the person of Lucille Ball.
Yeah.
And Nicole was able to really be Lucille Ball while at the same time take on the character of Lucy Ricardo on a TV show.
Yes.
And so you have this really driven woman, a perfectionistic woman. Nicole gets it down perfectly. And then you have Desi, who is no slouch on his own. He's a musical genius. He's a performer. He's a businessman, and he has his pride, and you do get that sense of why the two of them fell in love.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I liked about this film, because
okay.
because I have no ties to the show. I am not liking this film because it is Lucy and Desi. That is not it for me at all. For me, what I loved about this was that I had no idea that this woman was accused of being a communist and went through this entire stressful week-long situation where the show and her family came this close to getting completely canceled. That I've never read about. No one's ever talked about that. That to me was a revelation, and that is what had me gripped when I started to watch the film and realized that this was going to be about that. I found that extremely fascinating, because out of all the things we think we know about this couple, that's the one thing that I never knew. So that was what I liked about it most.
I liked it a lot. And I will mention something that just came to mind when you brought that all up. But the movie starts with, this is the worst week of Lucy's life. And it gets into this whole communist thing, and you go, oh, all right, this is Aaron Sorkin, communist, politics.
Yeah.
And so it starts off in a direction you don't expect this movie to go. And so I'm kind of like, well, okay, Lucy was a communist, and I'm like in the story, and then all of a sudden it cuts to a flashback, and I think this is probably the real only weakness of the movie is that, they had me going with this whole communist story, and then it becomes a typical biopic, and and so there was a jarring moment there, and then my love of Lucy came along, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to tell it's this weird story, but it was just an odd thing. And sure, we'll deduct a few points for it, but overall to me, it was still a good movie. So I'm going to guess you liked it. You liked it a lot. I was curious as to, I didn't think you had a real connection with Lucy growing up. So it was really interesting for me to hear what you had to say. So the question is, where did you fall on it? And I'm gonna say you liked it because of the performances, because it's Sorkin, because it's an interesting story. I'll put you at a solid 8.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting. It is a solid 8. There wasn't. I think for people, it's going to come down to their love for that era, or for those characters, and for that time period, and they were going to connect kind of on that level. And so for me, I connected with that particular story that I found fascinating, and I felt the performances were solid by everybody. So yes, you are correct. You have a much stronger tie to Lucille Ball and what she meant for you and your pop culture, stuff when you were growing up. But I do feel like you really like this too, give or take a few little things here and there, like you mentioned, the flashbacks and stuff. I don't think it was a typical biopic, but maybe you felt that there were some tropes that were a little typical of that. But I kind of think that for different reasons, you would also give it a solid 8.
I give it an 8.5. And I think it is because I was such a big fan of Lucy. And I think, short of doing impressions of them, I think they got it down. Because, having grown up, I did know Lucy. I did know Lucille Ball. I did know the story. And quite frankly, the what Hollywood was in the 60s, it's we know these stories, and it was certainly true in this case. And I think just as a Lucy fan, as an Aaron Sorkin fan, 8.5. I liked it a lot. Go see Being the Ricardos. It's going to be out in theaters. It's also going to be on Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. And be sure to like, subscribe, let us know what you thought. And with that, let's get out of here.